Hello, sea lions and dolphins, and welcome to your literacy lesson for today. We are doing work on fronted adverbials today, so there's something we've done before together, so you should have a good working knowledge of them, but obviously we can always work on things, we can always get better at them, see them in different contexts, and we haven't done too much of them, so it's always good to do a little bit more and just kind of make ourselves experts on them. So we're going to look at a active inspire flip together now, and then I will explain your task at the end. There is a little video that I've attached to the active inspire. Now I can't show you. I did have a go at playing the video while I was doing this video for you, but for some reason the sound wouldn't come through. So I've put the link on there. So if you want to, when I get there, I'll point it out to you. You can go and watch the video because it'll give you a little bit more input. But it's not vital. You won't miss anything if you don't watch it. So it's purely voluntary. If you want to watch it, brilliant. If you don't worry about it. Just stick with me. If you do want to watch it, just pause the video at that point, highlight the text, and go and watch it. It's on BBC Bitesize. It's just fronted adverbials on BBC Bitesize. So it should be easy to find. Okay, so I'm going to try and share my screen with you now, and we will get started on the active inspire. Here we go. So it says, obviously, that it's Iron Man by Ted Hughes. It's our new literacy text, as you know, from Monday. So we have the entire of the first chapter done now. Mrs. Wilson did that with you yesterday. So you can read it on here. If you pause the video, you can read it on here if you prefer. We've got most of the first chapter on here, but for the whole first chapter, which is where we've read up to, if you go on to the link I've put on the Sway, the card where you've come onto this video, there's also a link there to watch and listen to the first chapter of the Iron Man on YouTube. So if you haven't done that, I heartily encourage you to go and do that now. Pause this video, go back to that and watch that. If for any reason you haven't, if you have, don't worry, we will keep going now. So just pause the video and do that if you need to. If you don't, guys, don't worry, just stick with me and we will carry on. So today we're doing fronted adverbials. So what is a fronted adverbial? So interesting question. Now, in the top right corner, before we go on to that, you can see the text link for the video. So if you want to copy and paste that, please feel free. Or you can just type into Google BBC Bitesize fronted adverbials, and the video is the first one that comes up. So you can pop and watch that now. Or like I say, you can stay with me and we'll go through everything you need to know anyway. So what is a fronted adverbial? So adverbials are words or phrases that give more information to a sentence. So for instance, they'll tell you when something happened, or how something happened, or where something happened. So they can add a lot of information. We use them a lot without really realizing we use them. Now, the reason they're called fronted adverbials is because they go at the front of the sentence. So you can have adverbials in the middle of the sentence or at the end of the sentence. You can have them wherever you like, but a fronted adverbial is always at the beginning of the sentence. So no matter what, it has to go at the beginning of the sentence. So here's an example. Earlier today, comma, I discovered fronted adverbials. So another key thing about fronted adverbials, as you can see there, is they're always followed by a comma. Your fronted adverbial at the start of the sentence and have a comma at the end. So you can see here, earlier today, comma, I discovered fronted adverbials. Something else key to remember is because the fronted adverbial will always be at the start of the sentence, we also need a capital letter because it will always be at the start of the sentence. So there's really three key things to remember with fronted adverbials, and we'll look at some examples in a minute, so don't worry. It has to have a capital letter because it's at the start of the sentence. It has to have a comma at the end, and it has to tell you how, where, or when something is happening. Don't worry if that still sounds a bit like, oh, that's a lot of information, because we're going to look at some examples now, and then we're going to look at some Iron Man examples, and then I'll give you your task. So don't worry, there's plenty more information coming your way that will make it a bit easier. Okay, so these are some fronted adverbial examples. Now, I've written them already, obviously, but we're going to go through them now one at a time. And we're going to point out the key features of each fronted adverbial, and that should hopefully make it a bit clearer to you of how to use them. At the end of this, I'm going to tell you your task, which is going to be to write some fronted adverbials of your own. So the first sentence here says, later that day, I went for a walk with a friend. So the fronted adverbials at the start of the sentence. you can see it's got its capital letter. It's got a comma at the end. And the front adverbial is later that day. So it is telling us when something happened. It happened later that day. So it's saying when something happened. It's got a capital letter at the start and it's got a comma at the end. The key thing, guys, and I'll go through this just before you start your work, but the key thing to really remember with this is you can start your sentence with the fronted adverbial. So even if you don't know what you're going to write for the rest of the sentence, don't worry. Think of a fronted adverbial first. So later that day, all of a sudden in the park, as you stood on top of the cliff, all the ones we're going to go through in a minute. And then make the sentence fit to that. Because the key thing we're looking at today, yes, we're looking at the whole sentence and hopefully it'll all make sense and it'll all sound really good. You might get a conjunction in there to extend the sentence. But really the key thing we're looking at today is the fronted adverbials. So make sure you get those in first and then you can worry about the rest of your sentence. So the next one says, all of a sudden, the dogs started to chase each other. So we've got our capital letter A, start the sentence. We've got a comma at the end. And we've got the actual fronted adverbial, which is all of a sudden, which is telling us how something happened. It happened all of a sudden. It's like if there's a loud bang, like a firework, that happens all of a sudden. It doesn't slowly explode quietly and gently. It happens all of a sudden. It's a loud bang. So all of a sudden, comma, the dogs started to chase each other. Then we go on to our last example that is not related to the Iron Man. So it says, in the park, the boys played football happily. So this one has a capital letter, has an I at the start, because it's at the start of the sentence. It has a comma at the end, as we always do at the end of the fronted adverbial. And then the fronted adverbial itself is in the park. So this is telling you where something's happening. It's happening in the park. It's not happening in the town centre. It's not happening in the cinema. It's not happening in school. It's happening in the park, and the boys are playing football happily there. So now we're going to look at a couple of examples that are related to the Iron Man, and these are more what we're going to be looking at from you, because we want you to write fronted adverbial sentences, so whole sentences, but with fronted adverbials in them that relate to the first chapter of the Iron Man. So I've written a couple here, which you're very welcome to sort of magpie and change the end of the sentence or change a bit of the fronted adverbial, but sort of use these to help you get a head start, and then you can do the rest on your own using your own knowledge. So the first one is, as he stood at the top of the cliff, the Iron Man felt alone. So obviously it relates to that very first part of the story where he's standing on the cliff and he feels alone. He doesn't know anyone. He doesn't know where he's from. No one knows who made him. So he's feeling quite alone. So it's got a capital A because it's the start of the sentence. It has a comma. So you see this one actually goes on for quite a long time. Fronted adverbials don't necessarily need to be short. And it says, as he stood on top of the cliff. So this is telling you where something's happening, isn't it? It's telling you it was on top of the cliff. The Iron Man is standing on top of the cliff, not at the bottom, not to the side, not far away, on top of the cliff. Then we have another one. As night fell, the Iron Man lay on the sand in the darkness. So this is obviously when he's fallen down the cliff and he's on the beach in loads of pieces lying there. So it's got a capital A because it's the start of a sentence. It has a comma. And it says, as night fell. And that is our fronted adverbial. As night fell, the Iron Man lay on the sand in the darkness. So those are a few examples for you. And what we want you to do today, in a second when I finish this video, is write 10 fronted adverbial sentences, so whole sentences, that relate to the first chapter of the Iron Man. So as I said, you can magpie mine a little bit and use those a little bit, but obviously I want you to come up with at least 8 of your own as well. Now, what we're looking for today is we're looking for the fronted adverbials to be correct. So obviously for them to be at the front of the sentence, have a capital letter, have a comma, and tell us when, where, or how something's happening, which I know sounds like a lot, but actually if you look at the fronted adverbials on the screen, it's not a lot, is it? Later that day, comma. It's not a lot really, it just sounds like a lot. We're looking for complete sentences, so full stops at the end. But also we're looking for really good handwriting today. So when your parents send through the work, it should be your best handwriting, because we're only asking you to write 10 sentences today and not long sentences necessarily either. Though it'd be great if you can get conjunctions and stuff like that in there. The focus for today is the fronted adverbial. So we're looking for the fronted adverbial to be right and for some great handwriting today. So I hope that's all nice and clear. Like I say, if it isn't, do email us or watch the video again, of course, because you might find that you might find that the second time of watching, you understand. Happens a lot like that, doesn't it? Sometimes you watch something a second time or read something a second time, you think, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about now. So have a go at that. If it doesn't work, then please email us and we'll help you out. Have a really good go at the work. Obviously, after this, you've got a assembly and you've got news round, and then you've got a break. So it's quite relaxed after this. So give it your best go before you have that kind of relaxing period before maths. I hope you all have a great day. I'll talk to you a little bit later. Good luck with the work and have fun.